Rasmus Hojlund takes dig at Manchester United after Napoli Super Cup win. What really happened? Welcome back to United Daily Updates, your most trusted source for everything Manchester United. Before we dive into today's story, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. We bring you honest analysis, detailed breakdowns, and real talk about everything involving our club. No bias, no sugarcoating, just the truth from fans who understand what Manchester United means. Hit that subscribe button and join thousands of other Red Devils fans. Introduction. What would you do if you left a club where things weren't working out, moved somewhere new, won your first trophy, and suddenly everything clicked? Would you take the high road and stay quiet? Or would you let your former club know that leaving was the right decision? Rasmus Hojlund chose the latter. And his message to Manchester United was loud and clear. On Sunday, the Danish striker helped Napoli win the Italian Super Cup with a 2-0 victory over Bologna in Saudi Arabia. It's the first trophy Hojlund has won in his professional career. And rather than just celebrating quietly, he posted on Instagram with a caption that has everyone talking. What a great decision looks like. That's what Hojlund wrote alongside a picture of himself holding the Super Cup trophy. 5 words that say so much. 5 words that are clearly aimed at Manchester United, the club that paid £72 million for him, the club where he struggled for 2 seasons, the club that eventually sent him on loan to Italy. But here's what makes this story even more interesting. Several of Hojlund's former United teammates liked the post. Lisandro Martinez, Chido Obi, Patrick Dorgu, and even Andre Onana all showed their support. So this isn't just Hojlund being bitter. His former teammates seem to understand his frustration and agree with him. Antonio Conte, Napoli's manager, has also weighed in. He's defended both Hojlund and Scott McTominay, another former United player now thriving in Italy. Conte basically said that if these players weren't playing at Manchester United, there must be a reason. And that reason isn't the players themselves. So what really happened here? Why did Hojlund struggle so badly at United? Why is he suddenly looking good at Napoli? What does his social media post really mean? And what does all of this say about the current state of Manchester United? In this detailed breakdown, we're going to tell you the complete story of Rasmus Hojlund's time at Manchester United and why his Instagram post has caused such a stir. We'll look at his struggles at Old Trafford, his revival in Italy, what his former manager Antonio Conte said, and what this means for United going forward. This isn't just about one player's social media post. This is about a pattern at Manchester United where talented players arrive with big reputations and big price tags, then fail to perform, then leave and suddenly look good again. It's a pattern that should concern every United fan. So let's dive deep into the Rasmus Hojlund story and understand what really went wrong at Manchester United. Hojlund's struggles at Manchester United. To understand why Rasmus Hojlund's Instagram post matters, we need to go back to the beginning. We need to remember how he came to United, what was expected of him, and why things didn't work out. Manchester United signed Rasmus Hojlund in the summer of 2023 from Atalanta for a fee of £72 million. That's a massive amount of money for a striker who was only 20 years old at the time. It was a clear statement of intent. United believed they were signing a young striker who could be their number 9 for the next decade. The excitement around Hojlund's signing was huge. United fans were desperate for a proper striker. They'd watched the team struggle for goals for years. They needed someone who could lead the line, hold the ball up, make runs in behind, and most importantly, score goals. Hojlund was supposed to be the answer. But from the very beginning, things didn't go according to plan. In his first season at United, Hojlund scored 16 goals in all competitions. On the surface, that doesn't sound terrible for a young striker in his first season in English football. But the problem was where those goals came from. In the Premier League, which is what really matters for Manchester United, Hojlund scored just 4 goals. 4. In an entire season. For a striker who cost £72 million, that's simply not good enough. That's relegation-level striker numbers, not numbers for someone leading the line at Manchester United. His second season at United wasn't much better. He continued to struggle for form and confidence. The goals weren't coming. He looked isolated up front. The service wasn't great, but he also wasn't taking the chances that did come his way. It became clear that something wasn't working. So what went wrong? Why did a striker who looked so promising in Italy suddenly struggle so badly in England? The first issue was the pressure and expectations. Moving to Manchester United as a 20-year-old for £72 million is an enormous burden to carry. Every mistake gets analysed. Every missed chance gets criticised. The media attention is relentless. For a young player, this can be overwhelming. The second issue was the service he was receiving. Manchester United as a team weren't creating many clear chances. The midfield wasn't functioning well. The wingers weren't providing consistent quality. Hojlund was often isolated up front with little support. Even the best strikers in the world struggle when they're not getting good service. The third issue was tactical. Different managers used him in different ways. He wasn't given a consistent role or consistent instructions. One game he'd be asked to hold the ball up and bring others into play. The next game he'd be asked to run in behind. This lack of consistency made it hard for him to develop and find his rhythm. The fourth issue was confidence. When a striker isn't scoring, they start thinking too much. They start snatching at chances instead of being calm and composed. Hojlund visibly lost confidence as his time at United went on. You could see it in his body language. He looked like a player who didn't believe in himself anymore. The fifth issue was the comparison to other strikers. United fans naturally compared Hojlund to strikers at other top clubs who were scoring regularly. When you see Erling Haaland banging in goals for Manchester City or players at Arsenal and Liverpool contributing consistently, it makes your own striker's struggles even more painful to watch. By last summer, it was clear that something needed to change. United had signed Matheus Cunha, Brian Bumo, and Benjamin Sesko to strengthen their attack. With all these new options arriving, Hojlund was suddenly looking at significantly reduced playing time. The writing was on the wall. When Antonio Conte and Napoli came calling with a loan offer, it made sense for everyone involved. United would get Hojlund's wages off the books and give him a chance to rebuild his confidence elsewhere. Napoli would get a young striker with potential. And Hojlund would get a fresh start in a league where the pressure might be slightly less intense. The loan deal included an option to make the move permanent for £38 million if certain conditions are met. One of those conditions is Napoli qualifying for the Champions League. Given that Napoli currently sit third in Serie A and look likely to qualify, Hojlund's move will almost certainly become permanent. So Hojlund left Manchester United in the summer, having scored just 4 Premier League goals in his final season. He left as a player whose confidence was shot. He left as what many people were calling a flop. A £72 million mistake. Another United signing that didn't work out. But leaving United might have been the best thing that ever happened to his career. Because in Italy, under Antonio Conte's management, Rasmus Hojlund is looking like a completely different player. Hojlund's revival at Napoli. Fast forward to December 2025, and Rasmus Hojlund has just won his first professional trophy. Napoli defeated Bologna 2-0 in the Italian Super Cup final in Saudi Arabia. And Hojlund was part of the team that made it happen. But it's not just about winning one trophy. It's about everything that's happened since Hojlund joined Napoli. It's about how he's played, how he's looked, and how different he seems compared to his time at Manchester United. Since joining Napoli on loan, Hojlund has scored 7 goals in 19 games across all competitions. Now, 7 goals in 19 games isn't world-class. It's not Erling Haaland numbers. But it's a solid return for a striker who's still settling into a new team in a new league. And more importantly, it shows he can actually score goals when given the right environment. Compare that to his final season at United, where he got 4 Premier League goals in many more appearances. The difference is stark. Same player, different team, better results. That should tell you something about where the problem really was. But the goals are only part of the story. What's more impressive is how Hojlund looks when you watch him play for Napoli. He looks confident. He looks happy. He's making runs. He's holding the ball up well. He's linking play with his teammates. He looks like a proper striker again. In the Super Cup semi-final against AC Milan, Hojlund scored a goal in Napoli's 2-0 victory. That goal helped get them to the final. Then in the final itself against Bologna, while he didn't score, he contributed to the team's overall performance. He did his job. He was part of a winning team. Antonio Conte, Napoli's manager, has been full of praise for Hojlund since he arrived. After the Super Cup final, Conte specifically mentioned Hojlund and Scott McTominay, both former United players, and talked about how they've improved under his coaching. Conte said that both players were not playing regularly at Manchester United, so there must be a reason. But he was quick to point out that the reason isn't lack of talent. He said his job as a manager is to expand a player's knowledge and make him stronger. He said he invests a lot in that and believes every player he's worked with has come out improved technically, tactically, and mentally. This is a subtle but clear criticism of Manchester United. Conte is basically saying that talented players like Hojlund and McTominay weren't being developed properly at United. They had the ability. They just needed the right coaching, the right system, and the right environment. And now that they have that at Napoli, they're thriving. The tactical system at Napoli clearly suits Hojlund better than what he experienced at United. Conte plays a structured 3-4-3 or 3-5-2 formation where everyone knows their role. The striker isn't isolated. There's support from midfield. The team creates chances through organized patterns of play rather than hoping for individual brilliance. For a striker, having that structure and support makes a huge difference. Instead of receiving the ball with his back to goal and 3 defenders around him, Hojlund at Napoli is getting the ball in better positions with better options around him. The whole team is set up to create chances for the striker. The confidence boost from scoring goals regularly cannot be overstated. When a striker scores, they want to score again. Success breeds success. Hojlund is now in a positive cycle where his confidence is high, he's playing well, which leads to more goals, which increases his confidence further. At United, he was in the opposite cycle where everything he touched seemed to go wrong. Napoli are also having a great season as a team. They sit third in Serie A, just 2 points behind leaders Inter Milan. They're competing for the title. They've won a trophy. The whole mood around the club is positive. When you're part of a winning team, individual performances improve. When you're part of a struggling team like United have been, everything feels harder. The Italian league might also suit Hojlund's style better than the Premier League. Serie A is slightly slower, more tactical, less end-to-end than English football. For a striker who's good at positioning and making clever runs, that might be a better fit than the chaos and intensity of the Premier League. Hojlund himself has made it clear he's happy in Italy. Earlier this month, when asked about his future, he said next season he'll give his interviews in Italian. That's a pretty clear indication that he intends to stay at Napoli permanently. He's not thinking about returning to Manchester United. He's thinking about building a future in Naples. The contrast between Hojlund at United and Hojlund at Napoli is remarkable. Same player, completely different results. And that brings us to his controversial Instagram post and what it really means. The Instagram post that said it all. After Napoli won the Super Cup on Sunday, Rasmus Hojlund did what most players do in 2025. He posted about it on social media. But his post wasn't just a simple celebration. It was a statement. A message. And everyone knew exactly who it was aimed at. Hojlund posted a picture of himself holding the Super Cup trophy. He's smiling in the photo. He looks genuinely happy. And the caption read, "What a great decision looks like." Five simple words. But those 5 words have sparked huge debate among football fans, particularly Manchester United supporters. On one level, you can read this as just a player celebrating his success. He made the decision to leave United and join Napoli. That decision has worked out well for him. He's won a trophy. He's playing regularly. He's happy. So yeah, it was a great decision. Nothing controversial about acknowledging that. But let's be honest. That's not how this post was intended or how it's being received. This is clearly a dig at Manchester United. Hojlund is basically saying that leaving United was one of the best things he ever did. He's saying he made the right choice to get out of Old Trafford. He's saying his career is better off without Manchester United. That's a pretty strong statement from a player who cost United £72 million just 2 years ago. It's not often you see players publicly shade their former clubs like this, especially clubs as big as Manchester United. But what makes this even more interesting is the reaction from his former teammates. Lisandro Martinez liked the post. So did Chido Obi. So did Patrick Dorgu. And so did Andre Onana. These are players who are still at Manchester United right now. And they're publicly supporting Hojlund's post that's basically criticizing their club. What does that tell you? It tells you that even current United players understand Hojlund's frustration. They know what it's like at the club right now. They see the problems. They understand why he struggled. And they don't blame him for being happy that he left. If Hojlund's former teammates disagreed with his post, if they thought he was being disrespectful or unfair, they wouldn't like it. The fact that they did like it suggests they agree with him. They think he made the right decision. They might even wish they could do the same. Some United fans have reacted angrily to Hojlund's post. They see it as disrespectful. They point out that United paid a lot of money for him and gave him opportunities. They think he should be grateful rather than posting shade on social media. But other United fans have been more understanding. They acknowledge that Hojlund was set up to fail at United. He was bought for too much money at too young an age with too much pressure. The team around him wasn't good enough. The tactics weren't right for his style. Can you really blame him for being happy that he's found success elsewhere? The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Yes, Hojlund could have shown more respect to United in his post. But yes, he also has legitimate reasons to be frustrated with how his time at Old Trafford went. Both things can be true at the same time. What's clear is that Hojlund feels vindicated. He feels like he's proven that he is a good striker and that the problem wasn't him. The problem was the environment at Manchester United. And now that he's in a better environment at Napoli, his true quality is showing through. From a United perspective, this post is embarrassing. It's another example of a player leaving the club and immediately looking better. It's another piece of evidence that something is fundamentally wrong with how United operates. It's another reminder that the club's problems run deeper than just tactics or individual players. The post also raises questions about United's recruitment strategy. Why did they spend £72 million on a 20-year-old striker who wasn't ready for that level of pressure? Why didn't they provide better support to help him succeed? Why are so many United signings failing to live up to their price tags? These are uncomfortable questions that United's hierarchy needs to answer. Because Hojlund isn't the only expensive signing who's flopped at United recently. Antony, Jadon Sancho, Harry Maguire, Donny van de Beek, the list goes on. All talented players who struggled at United then looked better when they left or were given chances elsewhere. Hojlund's Instagram post might seem like just social media drama. But it's actually a symptom of much bigger problems at Manchester United. And those problems aren't going away anytime soon. What Antonio Conte said about United. Antonio Conte didn't just praise Rasmus Hojlund after the Super Cup final. He also made some pointed comments about Manchester United that are worth examining closely. As mentioned earlier, Conte talked about both Hojlund and Scott McTominay, two former United players now at Napoli. He noted that both weren't playing regularly at Manchester United, so there must be a reason. Then he explained what he believes that reason is. Conte said his job as a manager is to expand a player's knowledge and make him stronger. He said he invests a lot in that. He said he believes every player he has worked with has always come out improved technically, tactically, and mentally. Now, Conte didn't say this explicitly, but the implication is clear. If Hojlund and McTominay are now thriving at Napoli after struggling for game time at United, and if Conte's coaching is what's making the difference, then the obvious conclusion is that United's coaching wasn't good enough. This is a damning indictment of Manchester United's management and coaching setup. Here's one of the best managers in world football basically saying that United aren't developing their players properly. They have talented players, but they're not getting the coaching and tactical structure they need to succeed. And you know what? Conte has the credentials to make this criticism stick. He's won league titles in Italy with Juventus and Inter Milan. He's won the Premier League with Chelsea. He's proven that he knows how to get the best out of players. When he talks about player development, people listen. The Scott McTominay example is particularly interesting. McTominay came through United's academy. He played over 250 games for the club. He was a decent player but never quite good enough to be a regular starter for a team with United's ambitions. He was limited technically and tactically. Then McTominay moved to Napoli last summer, and suddenly he's looking like a much better player. He's more confident on the ball. He's making better decisions. He's contributing more goals and assists. He's become an important player for a team challenging for the Serie A title. Same player, different coaching, better results. Just like with Hojlund. The pattern is clear. Conte's comments also highlight something that United fans have been complaining about for years. The coaching at the club hasn't been good enough. Players aren't improving. Young players aren't developing. Expensive signings come in with talent but leave looking worse than when they arrived. Under Sir Alex Ferguson, Manchester United was famous for improving players. Young players would arrive with potential and Ferguson would turn them into stars. Experienced players would arrive and play the best football of their careers. That culture of development and improvement was a huge part of what made United successful. That culture has disappeared. Now, players seem to get worse at United, not better. Their confidence drops. Their decision-making becomes poor. Their performances decline. And then they leave and suddenly look good again. It's a damaging pattern. Conte pointing this out publicly is significant. He's not some random pundit. He's a top manager who's actually working with these players now. He sees firsthand what they can do when given proper coaching. And he's basically saying that United's coaching wasn't good enough. Some United fans might be defensive about these comments. They might point out that Conte is just trying to make himself look good by criticizing United. And sure, there's probably an element of that. Managers always want to take credit for their players' success. But the evidence supports what Conte is saying. Hojlund is performing better at Napoli than he did at United. McTominay is performing better. These are facts, not opinions. And if the players are performing better under Conte's coaching, then clearly something about his approach is working that wasn't working at United. The question for Manchester United is whether they're willing to learn from this. Are they willing to look at cases like Hojlund and McTominay and ask themselves what they could have done differently? Are they willing to examine their coaching methods and player development programs? Or will they just dismiss it and move on to the next expensive signing? Based on United's recent history, it seems likely they'll just move on. They'll sign someone else for a huge fee. That player will probably struggle. He'll eventually leave. He'll look better at his new club. And the cycle will repeat. Until United address the fundamental problems with their coaching and player development, this pattern will continue. Conte's comments are a wake-up call. But the question is whether anyone at Manchester United is actually listening. The pattern of players leaving United and thriving. Rasmus Hojlund isn't the first player to leave Manchester United and immediately look better. He's not even the first one this season. This is part of a troubling pattern that should worry every United fan. Let's look at some recent examples of players who struggled at United but thrived after leaving. Scott McTominay, as we've already discussed, moved to Napoli in the summer and has been excellent for them. He's scored important goals. He's been a key part of their midfield. He looks more confident and more effective than he ever did at United. Angel Di Maria was one of the most expensive signings in United's history when he joined from Real Madrid. He had one poor season at United, then left for PSG where he became one of the best wingers in Europe for several years. Same player, completely different level of performance. Memphis Depay was supposed to be the next big thing when United signed him from PSV. He flopped badly at Old Trafford. Then he went to Lyon and became one of League One's best attackers. Now he's playing for top clubs and has been excellent for the Netherlands national team. Romelu Lukaku scored goals at United but was criticised for his overall play and fitness. He left for Inter Milan and immediately won Serie A, becoming one of Europe's most feared strikers again. Then he had some issues at Chelsea and moved around, but the point stands that he was better at Inter than he was at United. Chris Smalling was seen as not good enough for United and was sold to Roma. At Roma, he became one of Serie A's best defenders and was a crucial part of their team. Italian football experts praised him as one of the league's top centre-backs. Even Alexis Sanchez, who was truly awful at United, went to Inter Milan and played some good football. He wasn't amazing, but he was significantly better than the version of himself that played for United. The list goes on. Daley Blind left United and had great success back at Ajax. Javier Hernandez went to West Ham and Bayer Leverkusen and scored goals freely. Morgan Schneiderlin went to Everton and looked like a completely different player. Now you might argue that some of these players left United because they weren't good enough and dropping down a level made them look better. That's partially true. Serie A and League One are not quite at the same level as the Premier League in terms of overall quality. But that doesn't explain everything. These players didn't just look slightly better. They looked dramatically better. They looked like completely different players. And many of them went on to achieve significant success, winning trophies and playing for their national teams. The common factor in all these cases is Manchester United. The club takes talented players and somehow makes them worse. The environment, the coaching, the tactics, the pressure, something about the club causes players to underperform. It's not just attackers either. Defenders like Smalling looked better after leaving. Midfielders like Schneiderlin and McTominay looked better. It's across the whole team. No position is immune from this pattern. This should be alarming for United's current players. If you're someone like Marcus Rashford or Bruno Fernandes, you have to look at this pattern and wonder if you'd be better off somewhere else. You have to question whether United is the right place to maximize your potential. It should also be alarming for potential signings. If you're a top player being linked with Manchester United, you have to ask yourself whether joining the club is actually a good career move. Based on recent history, there's a good chance your performances will decline and your reputation will suffer. The Hojlund case is particularly damning because he's so young. He arrived at United as a 20-year-old with huge potential. He should have been developed and improved. Instead, his confidence was destroyed and he ended up leaving as a player many people thought was a flop. That's a massive failure of player development. And now he's at Napoli, working under proper coaching, and he's showing that he does have quality. He's winning trophies. He's scoring goals. He's rebuilding his career. All the potential that United saw when they paid £72 million for him is starting to show through. Just not at United. This pattern needs to stop. Manchester United needs to take a hard look at itself and figure out why this keeps happening. Is it the managers? Is it the coaching staff? Is it the club culture? Is it the pressure and expectations? Is it the tactics? Is it the recruitment strategy? Probably it's a combination of all these things. But whatever the root causes are, they need to be identified and fixed. Otherwise, United will keep wasting money on talented players who fail to deliver, then leave and succeed elsewhere. The Hojlund Instagram post isn't just one player being petty. It's a symptom of a broken system that's been failing players for years. What this means for Manchester United going forward. So where does all this leave Manchester United? What does the Rasmus Hojlund situation tell us about the club's current state and future prospects? First, it highlights that United's recruitment strategy is still deeply flawed. Spending £72 million on a 20-year-old striker who wasn't ready for that level of pressure was a mistake. The club needs to be smarter about who they sign, how much they pay, and what expectations they place on young players. Hojlund should never have been bought for that fee at that age. He should have been signed for 30 or 40 million as a prospect to develop gradually. Instead, United overpaid and then expected immediate returns. When those returns didn't come, everyone panicked. That's not how you build a successful team. Second, it shows that United's player development and coaching is not working. Too many players are failing to improve or are actively getting worse at the club. This needs urgent attention. The coaching staff needs to be evaluated. The training methods need to be examined. The tactical approach needs to be questioned. Ruben Amorim has just arrived as the new manager, so it's too early to judge whether he'll fix these issues. But the fact that Antonio Conte can take the same players United struggled with and immediately get better performances from them suggests the problem is systemic, not just about one manager. Third, it raises questions about the club's culture and environment. Why are players so much less confident at United than at other clubs? Why does the pressure seem to crush young players rather than inspire them? Why does the whole place seem to drain confidence rather than build it? These are cultural issues that run deeper than tactics or coaching. They're about the atmosphere at the club, the expectations from fans and media, the way players are treated when things go wrong. United needs to create an environment where players can thrive, not one where they're terrified of making mistakes. Fourth, it affects United's ability to attract future signings. If you're a top player looking at your options, why would you choose United right now? The team is in 7th place. They're not winning trophies. Players who join seem to struggle. And then when they leave, they immediately look better somewhere else. That's not an attractive proposition. United are relying on their history and brand name to attract players. But that only works for so long. Eventually, talented players will start choosing clubs where they're more likely to succeed and develop. If United's reputation becomes one of a place where careers go to die, recruitment becomes even harder. Fifth, it puts more pressure on United's current attacking players. With Hojlund thriving at Napoli, United fans will be comparing his performances to those of the players who are meant to be doing better. If Benjamin Sesko or Mateus Cunha struggle, fans will point to Hojlund scoring for Napoli and ask why United can't get similar production. This isn't fair on those players, but it's the reality. Hojlund's success elsewhere makes United's attacking struggles look even worse. It provides evidence that the problem isn't finding good strikers. The problem is getting them to perform once they arrive at Old Trafford. From a financial perspective, United are taking another hit. They paid £72 million for Hojlund. They'll likely sell him permanently to Napoli for £38 million. That's a loss of £34 million in just 2 years, not counting his wages. That's terrible business and shows how much money United waste on failed signings. If United continue to overpay for players, fail to develop them, then sell them at a loss, the club's finances will suffer. Eventually, this impacts their ability to compete with clubs who are smarter with their money. Financial fair play rules make this kind of wasteful spending even more damaging than it used to be. The relationship between United and their former players is also becoming strained. When players like Hojlund and McTominay leave and immediately start performing better, there's often bitterness on both sides. United fans feel let down by players who didn't perform. The players feel let down by a club that didn't support them properly. This can create a toxic dynamic where former players are happy to criticize United publicly. That's not good for the club's reputation. United should be a place where former players speak fondly of their time there, not a place they're relieved to escape from. Looking ahead, United need to make some difficult decisions. Do they continue with the same recruitment strategy of signing expensive young players and hoping for the best? Or do they switch to a more mature, experienced approach? Do they need to completely overhaul their coaching staff? Do they need to change the club culture somehow? These aren't easy questions and there aren't simple answers. But what's clear is that what United have been doing isn't working. The Hojlund situation is just the latest example of a broken system that's been failing for years. Something needs to change. The question is whether the people running Manchester United have the courage and wisdom to make those changes. Based on recent history, there's reason to be skeptical. Final thoughts. The Rasmus Hojlund Instagram post might seem like just another bit of social media drama. But when you look deeper, it represents something much more significant. It's evidence of Manchester United's ongoing problems. It's a symptom of a club that's lost its way. A £72 million striker leaves your club after 2 disappointing seasons, goes to another team, wins a trophy, and then posts on social media about how leaving was a great decision. That's embarrassing. That's not normal. That shouldn't be happening to a club like Manchester United. But it is happening. And it's not the first time. And unless something changes, it won't be the last time either. For Hojlund personally, he has every right to be happy and proud. He's turned his career around. He's won a trophy. He's playing for a team that's competing for the league title. Under Antonio Conte's management, he's rediscovering the form that made United want to sign him in the first place. Could his Instagram post have been more respectful to Manchester United? Sure. He could have just celebrated without the dig at his former club. But can you blame him for being frustrated after what he went through at Old Trafford? Not really. For Manchester United, this should be a moment of reflection. Why did Hojlund fail here? Why is he succeeding at Napoli? What can we learn from this? How do we prevent it happening again? These are the questions United's leadership should be asking. But will they? Or will they just move on to the next expensive signing and hope for better results? Ruben Amorim is trying to change things at United. He has a clear tactical vision. He seems to understand player development. He's building relationships with the squad. There are reasons for cautious optimism. But Amorim is just one man. He can't fix everything on his own. He needs support from the club's hierarchy. He needs the right players. He needs time. And he needs the fans to be patient. The Hojlund situation shows how far Manchester United have fallen. When a player who cost them £72 million is celebrating leaving the club and his former teammates are supporting that message, something is deeply wrong. But it also shows that these problems can be fixed. Hojlund's revival at Napoli proves that he is a good player when given the right environment. United had the right player. They just provided the wrong environment. If United can learn from their mistakes, if they can create the right environment for their players, if they can improve their coaching and development, then maybe the next expensive young signing will actually succeed. Maybe the next striker will score goals and win trophies at Old Trafford, not at some other club. The question is whether United have the wisdom and courage to make the necessary changes. Or whether they'll just keep repeating the same mistakes and wondering why things never improve. Time will tell. But for now, Rasmus Hojlund is happy in Naples, winning trophies and proving his doubters wrong. And Manchester United are left wondering what might have been. Join the discussion. Thank you for reading this detailed breakdown of the Rasmus Hojlund situation and what it means for Manchester United. This is the kind of honest, in-depth analysis we provide here at United Daily Updates.